At the Economic Alliance, our mission is to drive economic, workforce, and population growth strategies, and to help businesses succeed. Join the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance and learn more about our work at cedarrapids.org.
Insurance isn't our only passion at UFG Insurance. We're dedicated to supporting the communities where we live and work. We proudly offer our employees paid time off to volunteer. Their work is making a positive difference across the U.S. UFG's Go Beyond Award is presented to one employee annually for exceptional community service. Striving to deliver on our promises is more than what we do. It's who we are. For a company promising community support, think UFG.
Okay, hi everybody, good morning. Welcome to the second track of the day for Iowa Ideas. This is our 9th year doing this, and today you're currently in the Community and Economic Development track. We're going to talk a little bit about worker recruitment and how we bring folks into the state and add them to our workforce here. Thanks for bearing with us. We had a couple of minutes of tech issues, but we're excited to chat about it. Before we get into it, I always want to recognize the folks that help us make Iowa Ideas possible. We have our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest, as well as our block sponsor, who you just saw a little bit about from the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance, as well as UFG. Those folks are really what help us make this possible, as well as everybody attending and really showing interest in things that are affecting people across the state. If you have any questions throughout, there is a Q&A bot or a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to fill those out, and we'll try to fill them and filter them into the conversation when we have time. Before we get started and I start kicking us off with some questions, I'm going to let panelists introduce themselves real quick. Just if you guys could share your name, where you work, and how long you've been doing it, we can get into the conversation. I think, Nick, we'll start with you and then go down to Juliet.
Perfect. So I'm Nick Hockenberry. I'm with Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. My role here is the Director of Workforce Programming. I've been in economic, community, and workforce development for about 11 years now, both here in the Dubuque area as well as Jackson County, just south of Dubuque. And my role, as I mentioned, is around workforce programming. So whether there's a program out there to create talent, attract talent, develop what our employers need for the region.
Great, I'll jump right in. Good to meet you, Nick. Juliet Abdel, I'm the president and CEO of the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. We are a regional organization that serves 3 counties, and it is through our economic development that incorporates workforce development components. It's through public policy, which is generally our traditional chamber of commerce that we have here, and then it's through our relationships with other partners, and that includes our community development entity, the downtown, and some of our surrounding special districts, like our medical district here branded as the MedQ. So we represent over 1,200 investors and over 8,000 as the voice of business for the region. And we have a team that is kind of the counterparts to Nick here in our community as well.
Awesome. And as folks see, we have Mace popping in and out. I'm sure he'll make a glorious debut once the tech issues are handled, and we'll let him introduce himself at that time. But real quick about me, I'm on our local government team here at the Gazette, but I've worked in Eastern Iowa for about 3 years. As Nick knows, as I used to work in Dubuque. So I'm really excited to chat today. But before we get too far into it, can you guys just talk about how workforce recruitment falls in line with your organization's missions or goals, or how you guys are working in that space?
Well, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off, and then I'll be curious to hear kind of your input as well, Nick. As an organization that's really here to drive economic prosperity for the region, we truly focus on all the elements that make those industries that we have here continue to grow, and those that may be interested in expanding or relocating consider our community. And a big factor in that process is for them to have the available workers that they need whenever they're up and going and looking at their kind of long-term strategy. So workforce development has always been a larger part of the role of economic development because it goes hand in hand in that. And our view on that is it's twofold. It's not not only recruiting those workers, but also trying to retain them throughout the time that they're with us and ensuring that they truly are a part of our fabric so they're not moving to another community in the longer term.
Yeah, I think that's well put. So very similarly, we're driven by employer needs. And so workforce recruitment is really what it means to those employers. And that is, that's the attraction game. It's bringing new residents, new skilled workers, new folks into our regions. But it's also developing that workforce. So that employer, whether it's in healthcare or manufacturing, is able to not only find a person to fill a role, but maybe develop a person to fill that role. I mean, it all feeds into the retention side of things, which is a whole different beast. Once you get them here, once you connect them with an employer, how do you keep them here? I think we all probably have experiences with that. But the workforce recruitment side of things is really people, place, and opportunity, and how we can make all of those things align well.
Yeah. And Mace, I see you're joining us, but don't worry, you haven't missed too much. We're just doing kind of introductions. And with that, if you just want to introduce yourself as well as comment a little bit on how workforce recruitment factors into the work that you do, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely, Grace. Thanks a lot for having me here today. I'm Mace Huffman. I'm a business engagement consultant with Iowa Workforce Development. I'm out of the Cedar Rapids and Iowa City local AJC, American Job Center offices. I cover a 7-county region throughout eastern Iowa. Been in the role for about 3 years with the state and Iowa Workforce Development for 10 years. Previous to this, I was a local veterans employment representative for eastern Iowa, and so I was involved heavily with the whole Home Base Iowa initiative, connecting with employers with veteran job talent and so forth, all the different veteran programs specifically for employers. Yeah, I mean, basically in my role here, it's really about, having the connections and the resources within the community, state level, all the partners we have at Iowa Workforce Development. So there's a lot of players involved with workforce. The beauty of, kind of what we have going on here in Iowa is that we have really a little bit of everything that can be tailored and customized for the employers. So if they're looking to, tap into local population, they can do that. Obviously, the example I gave with Home Base Iowa, that was really about bringing folks, across the country to the state of Iowa. So, yeah, in short, workforce and, addressing the challenges and everything is really about just kind of gathering all the resources available, thinking of new creative ways to be able to accommodate and assist the employer, the job seeker, the local economy, and that kind of thing. So appreciate being here today.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from all of you and what I heard when we met ahead of this to just kind of do a pre-meeting is you all work really closely with your community's employers. And Nick, I think you actually mentioned it was almost like a mission that these employers had given you, like, this is what we need from you, is workforce recruitment. And I'm curious, I mean, what are you hearing in your communities from employers in terms of what they're looking for and what would help them most when it comes to recruiting new workers? I think, Nick, if you don't mind starting us off, we can work our way around.
Yeah, so, for any economic development office, if you're doing business visits, you're often asking, what are your top barriers to growth or expansion? And you have similar conversations with prospective employers as they're coming into a community. What are the major pull points that are going to bring them into your community? And inevitably, at least in my professional career in the business, workforce has been at least in the top 3 of those conversations for every year in all of the visits that we have. And from them, we ask more specifically, is it availability? Is it a skills gap? And that's where, you get variations in responses, but we try to have an answer for both of those things, both that availability, the general applicant flow to employer opportunities, whether it's high skilled, entry level, or somewhere in between. And then the other side where it's really targeted, hard to fill positions that are critical to an employer's success in a community. And those targeted strategies have changed over at least my 11 years. Some are community marketing campaigns to attract new residents, or they're really targeted skills training programs and trying to resource them and connect them with the under and unemployed population. We have a program that we developed in conversation with employers called Opportunity Dubuque. And it grew out of a need for CNC operators in our region, and the gap being the cost of tuition for a program at our local community college, NICC, Northeast Iowa Community College in our region. Employers said they needed it, and students weren't enrolling in the program. And we said, okay, well, we will go out and market this. And we were successful in getting more students involved and also connecting with employers upon graduation. So we expanded that program to meet more employers' needs across different industries. And now we go from healthcare to food and beverage market and hospitality to manufacturing across a host of different certificate programs where we directly fund the tuition for anyone who's interested in those high demand careers.
And Juliet, I want to hear your take on this. I know you're a little bit newer to Cedar Rapids, but I'm sure your first few months have just been full of meeting tons of folks. I mean, what are you hearing? How does that overlap or differentiate from what you've been hearing in your kind of upstart conversations?
Sure. So I'll kind of give a quick background. I've been here for almost 60 days this Friday, but I've also been in this industry for over a decade, going on 15 when you count in kind of chamber and economic development. And workforce is a challenge all over the nation. This isn't an Iowa specific issue that we face. I can't find one community that's come up with the magic bullet or magic solution for that. It's always been a need that's been there. It's just how do you creatively come up with something that attracts to your specific community. And to the point that Nick made earlier, when we're in the economic development space, we're really all going continually out there to analyze how our businesses are doing. You're often hearing the terms BR&Es, where we're having those one-on-one conversations. That's at a state level. There are metrics that we all go in there and assess. And based on that, we have kind of the overall feel and feedback of what issues are they facing in real time, and what are those solutions that we can kind of come up with. And workforce continues to be at the forefront of it. I'd say, in my tenure and being in this industry, workforce has been a challenge. It just kind of got a little bit more exasperated, even more so with COVID, because you had a number of people kind of change up the tracks that they were on. Some chose that as an opportunity to take an early retirement. So then the timeline of when those positions would have been open, which would have happened either which way, happened a little bit sooner. You had others that realized that they may want a stronger life balance than just work, and moved into that more of a gig economy and become more selective on what they're applying themselves to. And so all those external factors, I would say, play into why someone isn't applying or why there's still this need that's out there in workforce. And you try and address it as you can in all layers, right? So it is with existing workers that you have, it's with individuals that are not a part of the labor at all because they either don't have the desire to or the ability to, and you come up with programs to meet that. We've partnered with a number of different entities within our community to come up with some of those creative solutions. So one of those kind of higher education or career colleges that we have in our area is Kirkwood, and that is one of our key partners when it comes to some of our manufacturing businesses that are here, especially our bioprocessing. They'll create specific programs for their employees to go through some sort of a training, but we know it doesn't stop there, right? So it's constantly looking at what other creative programs can we bring to life? Is there an opportunity that when there is a change in your work or in your job, that you're able to quickly adapt and apply to another type of industry utilizing existing skill sets you have, or by some sort of a quick training that you do as well.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think a big key point that Juliet alluded to there was creativity. I know that with Iowa Workforce Development, just within a good example of that is just within about the past year and a half or so, we did create the Iowa Office of Apprenticeship. So, it's really about just tapping into, every avenue possible. I mean, now we're getting the word out a lot sooner to high school kids, the younger population, about opportunities statewide. So example, case in point, work-based learning, which is really an umbrella term that encompasses registered apprenticeships, on-the-job training, internships, all those types of things, job shadow opportunities. And so really it's about planting the seed even earlier than what it used to be. Obviously, we all know by now that traditional colleges, right after high school isn't necessarily the works for everyone. So obviously having these other resources, giving people opportunities. And it's not just for that particular population. I mean, it's also for somebody who's middle-aged. Maybe they've been, pounding nails their whole life, and it's like, my body can't, take this anymore, but I want to stay in the industry and stay connected to construction or whatever it might be. So they're able to then, get into a registered apprenticeship program, the earn and learn model, so to speak, to where they can take that experience that they've learned along the way. They can couple that with new information, new technology, and then you kind of have the best of both worlds, kind of meeting up. So, and at the same time, they're able to, earn a living and make money while they're doing it. So a lot of the employers that I deal with, you hear a lot of the same answers, or they're just kind of, different shades of the same answer. For example, I work with, I mentioned at the beginning in introductions, I work primarily with Lynn and Johnson counties, but I also serve a lot of the rural communities that are around those areas. And so, a lot of the challenges are there is that, much of their employees, are kind of local from the local community. So they would like to be able to seek out and go, cast their net, wider, so to speak. But they found that, it's just even what seems like a short commute, for people here in Iowa, being a half hour, that's nothing, to a major urban center in the United States. So, but I guess that, people want the more immediate fix and be able to, just drive a few blocks down the road, that type of thing. So, just the ability to tap into, the employers be able to tap into, getting more applications. I mean, obviously the state of Iowa is a very small state population wise. So it makes it very challenging, to really identify and to get that, a lot of that skilled labor, or skilled, workforce. So, yeah. So like what Juliet said, just the creativity part, having programs like what Iowa Workforce Development has done statewide with work-based learning, registered apprenticeships, a lot of key partnerships with our intermediary, Kirkwood Community College, vocational rehabilitation, and that type of thing, economic development groups.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in this idea of these really creative, community-based solutions. But before we dig into them, because you guys all have some really neat examples, I want to follow up briefly on something Juliet had mentioned, which is COVID. Obviously, that disrupted pretty much everything. But it leads into a bigger question, which is when you guys think about the issues that you guys are trying to tackle with these creative solutions, what are they? I mean, what are those things that you feel like folks are really fighting an uphill battle for when it comes to recruiting people into Iowa? And I think, Mace, you mentioned it a little bit as well, and just how that looks different in rural and urban areas.
I think that, I'm sorry not to jump in too quickly, but why it's in my head, I think probably one of the big things too is that really set a standard for kind of what worker expectations were. So all of a sudden, you have people being able to telework, you have folks being employers being more accommodating in terms of what they'll allow, which maybe they wouldn't have traditionally done before. And so now personally, I think that may have created an expectation of okay, this is how things, should be going forward the rest of the way. I should be able to telework. I should be able to choose what days I work, what hours I work. And the reality is that doesn't align well with what the business needs and the business cycle might be. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, I think Mace, you said it so well just now. When you look at Iowa and you look at the industries that we're predominantly in, they're not the super nimble that you can be remote working. I mean, yes, sure, there'll be certain positions within a particular company that you can be remote, but then there are others that really require for you to be on the job. And I think that continues to be a challenge. That in combination with you have some companies that are here that exist, but they haven't quite gotten back to the work in work space, and that just affects the entire ecosystem when you're looking at this long-term recruitment strategy of not just workers, but growth for your community and what it can look like when you're trying to attract additional efforts in the future.
Yeah, just to add on here, zooming out at 10,000 feet or so, it was obviously a huge disruption in communities in general. So if we brought it down to the businesses, if you were an office-based business, over the last 5 years, you've really evaluated what that means for you. Recruitment for many businesses changed at that time as well. They tested whether they could do this remote work, and whether or not they were providing hybrid opportunities or fully remote opportunities. They became really adept at recruiting nationally, and popping up new satellites for different business lines. Now that's on professional services, but as Juliet and Mace pointed out, we have a lot of homegrown manufacturing-based businesses in Iowa, and that's harder to do on the line. But I will say it accelerated technology integration, and we've seen that over the last 5 years as well, where major investments have been made by our manufacturers throughout the state, whether you're rural or urban, in integrating new technologies. And with that comes greater need for skills development too, because operators and maintenance, those positions only get harder and the more technology you bring online. And then, you have spin-off businesses, which we've seen in Eastern Iowa, that are promoting these new integrations in the manufacturing space and offering a new set of services to this industry. So I think, there has been some real challenges that came through that period. I think that's undeniable. But there's been a lot of opportunity too. And when you're looking at it, not just from the business perspective, but like community development perspective, there's been a shift in the way that people consider where they're living. I think we're kind of talking about that as it related to remote work, but also just frankly, folks who liked the idea of not commuting anymore. So maybe they're changing what was a 30-minute commute to now living within the city of their employer. And how do communities take advantage of that new mobility, promoting the quality of life that they have? I think we're all tackling housing challenges and trying to develop how that conversation between housing demand and the opportunities to develop that targeted housing, not just any housing, but the right housing for the workforce and what our residents need.
And what that kind of reminds me of is, Juliet, the collaborative growth initiative, when we think about that connection between workforce recruitment and quality of life. And it's been really interesting for me to learn a little bit more about that. But can you share with the panel and with our viewers what that is or how you guys are working on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this really ties both comments from Mace and Nick incredibly well. Mace highlighted population growth and how Iowa hasn't historically had this significant growth as a state. And then with Nick just sharing, this proximity to being able to work and experiencing the community that they're in. Both of those overlap into into the workforce space. And that's why we kind of came up with this initiative to attract those younger professionals that are between the ages of 20 to the early 40s, younger families. So they're just now starting out and maybe have the ability to choose where to live, but continue to have their job. So we're recruiting remote workers into our market primarily for that purpose, because we're leaning into this brand that we've always carried of we're 5 seasons. The 5th season being that you have more time to enjoy with your family out in the community and being a part of that fabric. We've combined that in a couple ways. So the initial impact of it has been over a couple of hundreds that have already kind of expressed their interest in Iowa and in learning more about the Cedar Rapids broader region that we have here. And then through that, we had a target of by year end, our goal is to have about 15 that come off of this. 15, you'd be looking at 15 families that essentially choose to kind of come out to our community. We've already hit about 9 that have chosen to come here. They all signed in and are in that process of moving. And it's been about a month that we actually launched this effort. So the success already shows in once you're getting a chance to share about all the things that Iowa has to offer, and that you can have a pace of enjoying the environment that you're in, but also have a lot of things to do at the same time. That's very attractive to people that don't want to be spending their entire day on the road, that are, done with dealing with this cost of living that is through the roof, where, you're paying a couple of thousands for a 600 square foot apartment. You're actually wanting a space to grow your family and to build a home in. And so that's part of it. The Collaborative Growth Initiative was to attract those individuals. The other component of that was that now that we've had them here, obviously their kiddos are going to be a part of our ethos through the school systems that we have. And then their trailing spouse is the other component of the program that we have as we're fleshing that through. And okay, let's get them opportunities as well to potentially start working in some of our economy or some of our external business partners that we have over here. So it's been incredibly successful for about a month and a half, but it was driven by, a lot of our leaders, not just in our community, but in our surrounding metro spaces of Hiawatha and Marion, that have kind of come together and decided to put money where their mouth is and really help us come up with those creative programs as quickly as we can and have those quick wins.
Yeah, and you mentioned also this idea of families, right? And I remember the very first mover you had, it was a younger guy and his wife, and they're really, really little kiddo.
Yes.
And I think some folks probably think like, oh, they're moving here remote. Like, what does that look like? But his wife was an occupational therapist, and I know she's already working at a hospital here. So when we think about that family unit, I know maybe 15, when you first hear the number, you're like, oh, like you kind of wonder what the payout is. But I know I've chatted with Jody, who you work with, about the ripple effect you see from the spending of even just 15 families in a community.
Absolutely. And Jody Schaefer, she is my director of workforce. This is one of her programs that she gets to lead in attracting workers to the area and also making sure the overall retention of them continues as well. But Jody's role has been really pivotal for us. We never historically had someone directly focused on the attraction component of workforce. And so she started with us at the start of this year. Like I said, this program's been about a month long. The goal was to see maybe is it 15, but in the 6-month time period, and we quickly blew that off the water. That first mover was the poster child, right? Like if we want to show an example of what we would want, that mover was that. It was a boomerang back into our community. And I always love that component when they get to choose to come back to the community that they left. That is entirely different than just someone picking and I'm going to drop myself in there. So he came back, and then his spouse, so his wife, ended up having that employment. So that was kind of one of that trailing spouse experience that we alluded to and talked about. So in theory, you could have this replicate, or in the long term, even as they're here and they're enjoying the community, that could also evolve from what they're currently working in and how they're choosing to spend their time in their career paths.
And Nick, I want to see, talk to me a little bit about the You Can Be Great Here campaign, because that, to me, I see some echoes in terms of what it looks like to market a community to folks who maybe either left and haven't been back in a while, or who aren't super familiar to begin with.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background on the You Can Be Great Here campaign. It's really part of a 5-year planning process that our board does So every 5 years, we set out some real stretch goals. And in this past process, we looked at population, employment growth. We're looking at, of course, business expansions and investment in housing and commercial and industrial land. But where it falls on my plate on the workforce side, it's really population and it's really employment. And so we knew we had a lot of these programs that kind of touch on some pieces that Juliet was talking about too, where it is really connecting either folks who are here or might want to come here with employment opportunities and the amenities that we think we should be showcasing that sell us best. But we had never really pulled it together in a sort of unified way. And I think that really gets to the point of these efforts. You can't attract or retain a person with just one thing, because we are multitudes, aren't we? So we are not just our job. We are not just where we live. We have to have an answer for all of those things. And that the You Can Be Great Here campaign was really our first attempt. And we're learning through this as we're piloting this in partnership with the Iowa Economic Development Authority too, with their This Iowa talent attraction pilot. But it really is what works, what is the message that sticks, how are we best serving someone who's interested in experiencing a community or considering to relocate, and how are we finding that employer connection. We're lucky that we had components like access to BuqueJobs.com, where we already have that relationship with employers to market their opportunities online. We already have some skills training programs for folks who are considering new careers and need to meet the skills development needs for those high demand jobs. We're working on housing components and have built a good toolkit for folks to find what they might be looking for. But we're eager to watch what's happening at the Metro Alliance to really see what's successful there too. It really, that's the question that always comes up, which is, is it chicken or the egg first? When you are trying to retain and attract new businesses, workforce is an important component. But can you attract workforce, or do you have the workforce to attract that business, or do you need to attract that workforce first to bring that business in? And I think it is a little combination of them both. We're trying to learn from as many communities and bring in as many partners as possible. One of the things that I wanted to just highlight, one specific thing that was a part of our You Can Be Great Here effort was tied to childcare. We knew when we were endeavoring upon this process, did sort of a SWOT analysis of our communities in our region, and childcare we knew would be a question for a family moving back to a community. And we, at the time when we were doing this evaluation within our licensed centers, it was a 18-month wait list for infant care, unless you already had a kid in the center, and then you kind of get bumped up, and that is not a great marketable community asset. And there was a little bit of luck along with the work that we were doing, but the state was programming ARPA dollars to work on child care in communication with employers. We had about 12.5 employers who said we want to be a part of a solution, and we supported the opening of 3 new child care centers within Dubuque County. Our office was intimately involved in one that was located in our industrial park that was meant to serve those employers more directly. And then from there, we actually began a program called Business Champions for Childcare, where employers were contributing to the workforce recruitment and retention of childcare professionals at all of the licensed centers throughout the entire county. And so we were able to grow that workforce in just about 2 years' time since we've been running that program. New workers into the field, over 80 new childcare professionals with a community-supported sign-on grant through that program. And now, at least at this time, I can say that we have open infant care slots. So if you were new to the community now, where I would have told you 3 years ago that, it's an 18-month wait list, you can come to this community now and there is a spot for your infant.
I always tell people if they haven't been to Dubuque recently, they should go back because it's changed a lot. But one of the recent ones is the new daycare in downtown Dubuque. And I swear it just I know a lot went into it, but it feels like it just popped up right across the street. And so that's a really neat highlight. Thank you. Mace, how does this kind of overlap with some of your work, or what are you hearing that relates to some of the programs that the state does?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Nick had to say about, kind of the chicken or the egg. Do you have the opportunities as an employer to attract the workers, or do you have to have the workers to attract the business? And it's really kind of the perfect storm. I agree. I mean, it's got to be a culmination of a lot of things. It can't all just be, the job. Somebody can't relocate to Iowa just because oh, wow, I can go to work, 40 hours a week and then wait until the next week to go back to work. You got to have offerings. And I guess no better example than that, at least in my area, is Cedar Rapids. I mean, if you look around, there's great housing being established downtown. There's all kinds of offerings in terms of leisure, whether it be, restaurants, bars, what they're kind of doing there along the river now with the casino. So, things like that, in my opinion, are things that are going to be a good draw, so that hopefully you can, really, boost things up in that capacity from the worker part of it. A lot of obviously anywhere I go, similar like Nick said, childcare and housing has always been a big concern. I was just on a project with Johnson County, where they were assessing kind of the non-urban areas of Johnson counties, and what's going on there? How can we grow these? How can they make things that attractive and do things with the downtown, kind of that Solon, Iowa model, with the great things they have to offer right there. So it's really a matter of, back to my days as a veterans representative, a great program that I was able to really promote well to employers was the DoD Skill Bridge program. And, so that was an example of something that employers could really see. They could test out, and it could be a good way to get specifically veteran job seekers and their families to the state of Iowa. And then, in some cases, once those folks got here, maybe they'd never lived here, maybe they never visited here, they got a good taste of what Iowa was all about. And it's like, wow, this is really a hidden gem in the, throughout the U.S. of anywhere else I've been. I mean, a 10-minute commute to work when they were driving, an hour and a half, 2 hours in Los Angeles or something like that. So, and that's a great situation, because the job seeker, the veteran, gets to come in, gets to kind of dip their toe in the water and see okay, I want to, I'm going to do this, and I'm still technically active duty. The employer likes it because the DoD pays the wages during that time frame for, the 6 months, 180 days outside of discharge or retirement. So, identifying any programs, the work that Nick has done and his folks in Dubuque, and of course Cedar Rapids with, getting folks to come here, and then I believe they get $5,000 payment. So, just uncovering a lot of things like that. I do believe there are some employers that offer something comparable, that if they are able to recruit and attract families, they'll able to subsidize or assist in, some other ways. So, yeah, it's got to be, kind of the whole deal. And I don't really know if there's control around, the college population graduating, from college. Let's face it, we were all 19, 20, 22 years old, and, the world is a big place. And there's a lot of exciting things to do out there. So I think part of it's just human nature to want to leave the state. But, you know, I think that that's changing, though. I know that this area looks a lot different now than it did when I was growing up here, you know, 30 plus years ago. You have a lot to offer here, and it's just going to continue to grow. And I think that's going to work in our favor. And so just a way to, you know, consistently, you know, monopolize that and benefit from it as an area.
You know, Mace, you just raised something that was really a good point about people choosing to kind of not leave too, right? Is that we have this opportunity to now do so with all this growth and forward momentum that we have. I think it even speaks to some of the apprenticeships that you highlighted earlier as well. And what we're finding even from a retention effort, right, is so instead of the attraction piece, the retention part of it is that we're also starting a little bit younger to try and get them more engaged sooner, right? And so we have a couple of programs that are dedicated to that. Our Ignite CR is dedicated to any of those younger interns that are in our community in business spaces or in even our public sector, and convening them on a regular basis together, kind of like a cohort that's going through that same experience together in the community so that they can continue to stay in touch and stay curious even after they're done serving as interns. And then kind of the next phase of that is our younger professionals that, okay, you finished college or you finished your post-secondary degree. The next step or the natural step of trying to build a network and trying to connect with other younger professionals that might be in the area that you don't run into or see or know how to connect with. Even though we're so digitally connected, there's a difference between that and being having that human connection. And so that young professionals group, Impact CR, really helps in filling that particular niche for those younger folks. And as much as we can get them to see all these opportunities that are here in our community that you don't necessarily see when you're just a part of it and you're in a younger season of life. That's one of the things we're trying to get them to open their eyes to.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Juliet and Grace, but Mace, you may be the odd one out who actually grew up here in Iowa, because all of us did not. And I think that's part of the story here, which is really awareness of the opportunities. You know, I came here with my family when my dad had an opportunity to grow his career, and you know, it's stuck. It grows on you. And I think the more, because typically our metros in the state of Iowa are smaller metros, you know, outside of Des Moines, we're all in the middle of the table as it relates to metros across the nation. So how do we spread our word? And I think one of the areas that we're focused on is that younger population, but the recruitment that's been done for us with our higher ed partners. And so one of the things in the last couple of years we've done is partner with the four-year institutions as well as our community college and a couple of our theological seminaries in the area to say, let's work with your student life department. We certainly do the career awareness side and intern engagement work, and have done that for many years. But we decided that it was also important to bring these students off campus to enjoy the community in the same way that the rest of the residents do. So eliminate the cost barrier, eliminate transportation, bring them to college age events at interesting locales. And we call these our community of colleges event series. So it's, you know, we rent out a few movie theaters, they get a free screening of a new movie all together as college students. We do a hockey night, we're doing a bowling night, just opportunities for students to meet other students from the other schools, but also to experience the community in a different way. And one of the other initiatives that grew out of that in conversation with higher ed was, well, we have this other set of students that is even more interested in staying post-grad, and that is our international students. And so what we partnered with our Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque on was an international student retention effort, which was not only engagement and awareness with those international students who, over 400 or so, depending on the year in our region alone, who are graduating with STEM, in most cases, the majority STEM degrees, make them aware of the opportunities here, but also to show the employers that it's a very easy connection to this eager population of skilled workers that doesn't require employer sponsorship for the first year and up to 3 years of that initial period once they graduate. And this is your opportunity to gather a new perspective from a more worldly population of skilled workers, and it's sort of an untapped opportunity too. And so when engaging our higher ed institutions, I think, is just one of those great opportunities. They're a cultural asset in our communities, of course, our colleges and universities are, but this is a way to kind of have a win-win. They add value to their students' experience, and we can add value to our community experience too.
And across those conversations, I mean, I'm hearing partnerships with higher ed, I'm hearing partnerships with cities, employers. I mean, who else are you working with on this? Or what are some partnerships that you feel like have really worked in the communities that your organizations operate within?
So we have a Workforce Innovation Council, and it's made up of a number of different stakeholders, private sector, public agencies that we've worked with. We've worked, of course, with our state level as well. So the Iowa State Labor Office, we have our higher education, I would even say even our high schools are an opportunity, right? So we even come up with those creative programs of trying to bring out teachers to have boots on the ground inside of these businesses so that they can start incorporating them into the classrooms as well and start explaining, here are some of the things that we've experienced and seen in the area. You have your traditional employment agencies or agencies that are focused and dedicated, of course, to trying to recruit. And then those career services offices naturally have that hat on a consistent basis of trying to link up those graduates that are going out as well. But it's a full gamut in addition to some of our nonprofit partners that might be in that space as well.
I was just going to say, how much time do we have left? Because I'm sure, Juliet, you could run through all of the investors, all of the program partners. There's no work that comes out of an economic development or chamber office that doesn't include not only a formal partnership, but just collaboration amongst organizations, whether it's private sector employers down to, my counterpart, Victor, or my counterpart to Mace in my region is Victor. I've worked with him for many years. Our federal workforce, Title I, Title II, and of course our job centers folks. I mean, Voc Rehab's been at the table for us for a long time, and those are just institutional partners. So there are so many people who could be listed, but I also think it comes to like a shared language and understanding of the challenge or opportunity that we're coming to. So when Juliet said she has sort of a Workforce Innovation Council, we have a similar thing that we call Dubuque Works, which brings all of those partners around the same table, where we research a program or an issue, we really study it, figure out how we can collaborate together as organizations, who's leading an initiative, and then implement the thing, pilot, new program, a marketing campaign, and then inevitably evaluate what was successful, and then very likely have to adjust and reiterate it going forward for success. And I think that model, regardless of whether it's attracting new residents or developing new talent, is really the sort of recipe for success for any of our communities.
Yeah, definitely. You guys hit it on the head. I mean, and as far as my day-to-day, week-to-week duties, I'm big on the economic development part. That's probably my favorite part of my position. Is I love to sit down and visit with, whether it be Greater Iowa City, which I work with a lot, Cedar Rapids Economic Alliance, but even, further down, even on more of the micro level. So even like getting into some of those rural communities, like down in Kelowna or Washington County, Iowa County. I went to the City of Victor Board of Supervisors City Council meeting week and a half ago. So I think that part of that recipe that Nick and Juliet were kind of talking about is, finding out, when I find out what's going on there locally, then I can kind of integrate things through my position that or ideas that might be beneficial to them. They can kind of process that and like, okay, hey, what did you mean by this? Or, can you expound on that a little bit? So then it begins a dialogue, and it's like, then they remember like, well, hey, that guy from my workforce development came down here a couple of weeks ago. He mentioned something about this work-based learning or registered apprenticeships. How might that model work for our local businesses and that kind of thing? And so it just kind of, I like to look at it, not only all those things on a macro level, but also kind of on a micro level, really find out what's going on in that community, and then how to kind of get that word that out more, and then try to come up with some solutions to address whatever issues they may have, or how to increase what it is they want to accomplish. So.
And we just have a little bit of time left here, so I'm going to put you all on the spot and really ask you to condense this. Say somebody asked you, I'm thinking about moving to Iowa. What is the first thing that you would want to highlight about your community to somebody that wasn't familiar?
Low key.
Yeah, you can choose to be low key, or you can choose to be activated. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, there certainly is a bit of a vibe here that I think is attractive. I think one of the things that I took out of Mace, that I think I took from Mace's comments that I think applies here is, and a little bit of Juliet's, is really, no matter where you choose in Iowa, there's a community that has an opportunity for you. Whether you're looking to be in a metro like Cedar Rapids, or you're looking to be in that small town of Solon, there's a community that wants you. There's an employer that wants your talents, and there's an opportunity for you to make a difference there.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you three tuning in and kind of sharing your experience in this area and talking a little bit about what workforce recruitment looks like in Iowa. I think that is about to round us out. We have a couple minutes left. So I also want to send a quick thank you to everybody watching, all of our attendees, and again, our sponsors. We have the presenting sponsor in ITC Midwest, but we also have the EA, the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance, and UFG as our block sponsor here. This is actually just the start of our conference. I think this is the second panel of the day in the various tracks. Would highly recommend everybody check out what's left today and tomorrow. Kind of like Nick said, you should be able to find a little bit of everything in Iowa, and you should be able to find a little bit of everything in Iowa ideas. So I'd highly recommend giving a look at what we have left and finding something that interests you and learning a little bit more about everything facing Iowa. Is there anything left from the three of you, or anything that you just wanted to round us out with?
I just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the conversation and learn from my friends Mace and Juliet too.
Well, I'd reiterate the same thing. And for those that are tuned in, if you're not engaged with us on workforce development, we all clearly have ways that you can. So we love creative thoughts, minds, and people that want to be a part of creating solutions.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, everybody. And please reach out if you'd like on LinkedIn. I'm out there. I'm actively involved with it. Definitely like to connect with anybody that's out there that has an interest in learning more or wants to have any more discussions.
Great. And just a quick reminder for everybody, all of our sessions are recorded. So if you want to listen to this one back, so much fun, you can certainly do that after the fact. Or if there's another panel that you couldn't make it to that was at the same time as this one, definitely check them out online. I know there's a couple that I want to be able to get to that I'm excited to watch back later. So I think that's about it when it comes to this topic. Thanks again, everybody. And just really appreciate everybody's time and interest in some of the issues that are facing Iowa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.